Yeah, we'll turn these off.
Reminiscing is very good, I think, for us. And I want you to understand that JFK was my president. In 1961, I graduated from high school. I was not able to vote for JFK, but if I could have, I would have. I think we went from having the oldest president we've ever had, Eisenhower at that time, who was suffering from heart attacks, was people like our grandparents, to a young man, well, older than us, but a young man who had all the potential in the world. He was charismatic, he was handsome, and he was our guy. In 1961, I graduated from high school and joined the Coast Guard, went to the Coast Guard Academy. And in 1963, in the summer, after I had been, just after my 20th birthday, JFK came to visit the Coast Guard cutter, Eagle, on which I was a member of the crew, a cadet member of the crew. And I have here a Coast Guard film, it's about 7 minutes long, of that visit to the Eagle. And I think it's very important. You'll get a taste of Kennedy, you'll get a taste of his youth, you'll get a taste of how charismatic he was, and you'll see a little bit of the Coast Guard in action. Cheryl, what do I need to do?
I'm going to help you.
Good.
Never been here.
Eagle is a former German training ship. We got her in war reparation for World War II, and her use of the Coast Guard chapter. That's the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. NCIS was the
Is that Anacostia?
Yep, the Anacostia River. Kind of tough to get that ship unwieldiness up the river. We didn't sail it.
Okay, where are you, Mike?
I'm in there somewhere.
President of the United States, Mr. Secretary, members of Congress, Superintendent, Commandant, distinguished officers, cadets. Great personal pleasure for me to have an opportunity with the Secretary of the Treasury and the members of Congress to review the cadets of this ship and to have an opportunity to indicate our great interest in the Coast Guard. As a sailor on one of the ships of the Coast Guard this weekend, I realized how important and significant this operation which you carry out today is. I'm not sure there are many other Americans who could climb that rigging and furl those sails in good times and in bad times. I think that the American people have been too long unaware of the high quality and high caliber of the cadets of the Coast Guard. When I was a member of the Congress, I had an opportunity to make an analysis of the kinds of examinations which are given to cadets entering the Coast Guard. And I must say they are most exacting. They are of the highest standard. Academically, the Coast Guard is certainly second to none of its sister academies of the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. It attracts able young men from all sections of the country who love the sea and who recognize that the Coast Guard, with the Corps of Engineers, has a very special opportunity to serve the American people and our country, not only in wartime, but also in peacetime. And there is not anyone who has sailed any of our lakes or oceans who has not at one time or another been the beneficiary of the faithful service of the Coast Guard. This is a very ancient service in our country's history. Its first father, progenitor of so many distinguished acts, Alexander Hamilton, began the Coast Guard as a revenue collecting service, asked the Congress of the United States for appropriations for 10 vessels, the first of which was the cost, a total when fully equipped of $1,000, and was named the Massachusetts. The Eagle, the first Eagle, was one of our most distinguished warships, and in actions against privateers of France, captured over 5 vessels, recaptured 7 American vessels, had a most distinguished record up till the time it was decommissioned in 1801. A number of Eagles have followed since, and we are glad today to visit the most recent. This is the oldest continuous seagoing service in the United States, stretching back to the beginning of our country. So I want all of you who are cadets to know how proud we are of you. I hope that you and your fellow Americans realize how vital this service is. You serve our country, as I've said, in peacetime, in ice patrols, and weather patrols, in protecting the whole standards of the merchant marine, in protecting safety at sea. And in time of war, you with the American Navy, as you did in World War II, at the time of Korea, defend our coast by defending the outermost reaches of the approaches to our country. So we're very delighted to see you. The mission of the Coast Guard in your manual is to graduate young men with sound bodies, stout hearts, and alert minds, with a liking for the sea and its law, and with that high sense of honor, loyalty, and obedience, which goes with training.
The guy sitting down the backstage.
Well-rounded in seamanship, in science, and in meanness, and strong in the resolve to be worthy of the tradition of the commissioned officers in the United States Coast Guard in the service of their country and humanity. This mission has been faithfully carried out, and I'm delighted that we have a chance to see today the high quality of the cadet. The words I like best in this very important mission is to graduate men with a liking for the sea. And I know that all of you share the great affection we have for that ever-changing ocean upon which we so much depend. Gentlemen, I've been informed that this constitutes a visit to the Coast Guard Academy, which I look forward to making, and therefore taking advantage of my prerogative as Commander-in-Chief, I want to exempt with the commission of the Superintendent, the Commandant, Secretary of Treasury, and various others. We want to exempt all of you from any penalties which you may now carry with you, and to tell you that we're proud of you and wish you many years of service in the Coast Guard and the service of our country.
So I was up there in the rigging that day. You can imagine how proud I must have felt. Now I came down the standard way, down the rope ladders. The guy who went down the backstay was doing an extreme no-no. I mean, we did it all the time when we were at sea. It was a quick way to get down. But of course, with the visit of the president, we didn't want to lose a cadet falling flat on his face from 100 feet up. So nobody could go down the back stairs. Of course, my classmate there knew that he was going to be on television. This was JFK, so he went down the backstairs. Wasn't he lucky that JFK in the next 5 minutes excused us from all penalties. So he got a home for free card. Okay, Cheryl, if you'll do this, I'm going to do something, if I can, Rich.
Yeah.
That was August of 1963.
62. 62.
Oh, I'm sorry, 62. I apologize.
You want to ask first?
Yes, 1 year later in November, this other video takes place. So I went from that time of exuberance in 1962 to November of 1963 when I marched in his funeral procession. I have to say that it was one of the saddest days of my life and the saddest day in the lives of many of the people who were watching. I started watching this and I said, people need to see this because you have to see it from the inside out. So I'm going to let it run. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Marine Band, and the various services in Academy contingents. Navy. He marched right behind the casket in the parade since JFK was a naval officer. People were lined up from the Capitol across the Lee Bridge to Arlington. I'm sorry, across the Arlington Bridge.
Actually, it was Francis Scott Key Bridge that
Thank
went
you.
straight
Thank
into
you.
where the cemetery was.
Which bridge, Bob?
It's the Key, I think it's named after Francis Scott Key, I'm not
Okay.
sure. I have to check.
The caisson,
It's adjacent to the Lincoln Memorial. Catch it.
and the riderless horse being led behind the caisson.
Which I think the horse's name was Black Jack. And if you see photographs of the horse, there are boots turned backwards, stirrups.
What is that symbolic of?
I guess
A
great
lost
loss,
silver or
yeah.
something?
It's traditional. And isn't that the same caisson that Lincoln?
Pardon?
I believe that might have been the same caisson that Lincoln.
Is Lincoln?
Yeah.
So there's actually like a funeral protocol for presidents.
I believe so.
How many have
West
died?
Point cadets,
How many have died in office?
Oh,
Three?
let's see, Wilson was one, Roosevelt. Who else was
What?
Wilson, Roosevelt, who was the other assassinated?
Garfield.
Garfield, that's it.
Or Lincoln.
And Lincoln.
McKinley,
Okay.
Oh, and
Couple
then,
others died.
oh, William Henry Harrison, 30 days in office.
Yeah, he was only, yeah.
He didn't wear a coat on his inaugural day, he caught pneumonia.
So the academies have been, when were the academies integrated? It would have been Truman's time.
oh no. Oh, you mean integrated as far as black were concerned?
Yeah.
Races? Yeah, it would have been. The class behind us had the first black cadet at the Coast Guard Academy. Interesting to know that going up and down the mast now, they have a harness that you wear and you clip on as you go up and down. and clip on while you're doing the sales. I don't know whether that started because of OSHA or it happened when we started to allow women in the academy, and somebody thought, well, it's okay if a male cadet goes just flat on the deck, but we certainly don't want a female cadet to do that. I'm just speculating there. Anyway, times have changed. I'm gonna let this run because after a while you get inside one of the vehicles and you actually be a part of the procession and go past a lot of sad faces.
While watching this, when we finish, I'd like to go back then to basically to the mood of the country in 1960, to the first film, and so you can start remembering where you were, and what your thoughts were, and those of your family and friends. At the beginning of this. And then most of us here are old enough to probably remember exactly where we were. Most of us here are old enough to remember exactly where we were at the time of the assassination.
Oh, sorry about that, I don't know why that came up.
How did that get there?
I don't know.
Somehow it came in on YouTube.
It's a YouTube thing. Okay, so it's just about to end.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mike. Yeah, we've all seen. So maybe we should do this. By the way, I was a freshman at the University of Denver. Kennedy came to campus, and I packed around that campaign poster for about 20 or 30 years, and finally got it framed. Well, Donna Butterfield framed it, so I don't know how long ago that was. But anyway, and but of course, like Mike mentioned, at 18 we couldn't vote then, right? And I came from a Republican family, and so I was in the transition phase myself there. But I do have one recollection. My parents were good, staunch Lutherans, German, and the people in our church were very, very worried that the Pope was going to be running America. And we kind of laugh at that now, but that was the gospel. So that's why I wanted John to talk about that, but maybe start with your elder, with Edsel, to tell the story about being in a conservative Protestant seminary at the time. Go ahead, Edsel. Yeah.
Well, we started back in 59 and 60. I was a senior out at LeGrand Eastern, and Pat was a sophomore. And Wayne Morris, who had just switched was running in the Oregon primary, he just switched from a Republican to an independent to a Democrat, was running. Hubert Humphrey, and then also Ted Kennedy. And he even took my wife out for a Coke date. Was there. He was meeting all the young women then. But after that election, I don't remember anyone from Republican represented on the campus, but then I went on to a conservative seminary in Kentucky, which I only stayed 1 year. I said if I'd stayed there another year, I'd lost all my religion. But I transferred on down to Emory University, but for seminary. But that was the election, and it was my first time to vote. And I voted, and as far as I could tell, I was the only person on the whole seminary campus that voted for Kennedy. And they not only did vote, but they were in contact with the conservative Wheaton College, all of these, and they were calling back and forth and said, keep praying that the Cook County is going to find the corruption and it'll change election with Illinois changing over. So they didn't give up for a long time. And then from there, I went down to Emory that first year, and that was when the Cuban Missile Crisis came. And Pat was teaching, we were the second year down there. She was teaching and I was in seminary, and the missile crisis came, and we were supposedly within range of the missiles from Cuba. And so she had to teach the kids to be under the seats, and we stored food, water, and all in, you know, we didn't have any food anyways. The theology department was the only poor section of the university. But then the next year went up to the University of Iowa to study history, and it was during then when this happened. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and I remember the effect. But the thing that you said, and he mentioned, Kennedy was certainly the Camelot of the time. He was our visionary. He gave hope, and we kind of in a, there's no great causes taking place at that coming in. And he came in, and I've often wondered after his assassination with Johnson, who was so, as you said, so complex. Johnson was able to get the civil rights legislation and all that passed. I don't think Kennedy could have ever done that. He was a visionary, but he didn't understand legislation to get things done. And so it was after the death of Kennedy and Johnson taking that over. And again, I was there because, again, I try to tell people how things were in the South when I was down there, and you just can't believe it. The Maddox, who became the governor, had a big restaurant, and when you went there, he handed out axe handles. I never went, but he handed out axe handles to all the customers to keep those blacks from coming into the restaurant. And the elders at the First Baptist Church, which is a big church, probably 8,000 members, they locked arms, not allowing any sit-ins from any black persons at that time to come into the church. And you just don't know the times what they were and how bad they were. Even up in Kentucky, they were not good.
And I rode to work, I was in DeKalb County teaching, and I rode to work every day with the granddaughter of the head of the Ku Klux Klan. And we spent all our time arguing about how they treated the blacks. And she said, you just don't understand. She said, my mammy was just like my mother to me. And that's interesting.
John, would you follow up, and you were, I don't know exactly how old you are, but you were in Boston growing up.
My only direct memories of the election are that my older brother, who was a year and a half older than I am, he used to sing a little song that he kind of made up, and they sang in school, but it was to whistle while you work. Whistle while you work. Nixon is a jerk. Eisenhower has the power to beat him up. That was how like a kid pre-kindergarten saw the election.
Okay.
We saw it like a rivalry. But I've got a very cool inauguration book that my dad had, which I never actually even saw while he was alive. I don't remember seeing it. But it's the official inauguration program, and my dad's name is on it. And
So he went, you think?
You could get these. The cost of this was $1. And this is copy number 762 of the limited deluxe edition of the inaugural program. And it's really great because it's got lots of articles from, really names that we would still know today. I mean, James McGregor Burns, William S. White, I don't know Mary Van Rensselaer Thayer, but it could be the Rensselaer College, might be named partly for that family. Elizabeth Carpenter. They're writing about the first families, both Kennedy and Johnson there. And then there are articles with perspective about the inauguration itself from, let's see if I can find another. I mean, the pictures are awesome. Pictures of the inauguration, people like Eleanor Roosevelt and John McCormack and things like that at the inauguration. Statements from Kennedy, Johnson, that one's from Charles Barkley. I don't know Brown is, James Michener, we all know, Mary McGrory, we know, Robert Frost, we know. So it's got, I mean, it's a great little work of literature, each one is just
So
about
that, it
each
probably
one.
didn't indicate that he went to the inauguration,
No.
but you could buy it, and in Boston, they were probably ubiquitous.
Right, I think it was one of those things, I mean, it's kind of amazing that, and it's got his name on it, it says J.J. McColgan right on the front, so you could get it. It's probably a little bit like when your team wins the World Series, you can get a baseball bat that's inscribed, it says Chicago Cubs. But I mean, my dad was obviously one of the first to, because he was in the first 1,000 that got the deal, so.
So Eileen, you were a sheltered Catholic girl. Do you remember the controversy at that time about?
Yeah, my dad didn't like any Democrat.
Okay,
So I was brought up.
but he was Catholic.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
and he didn't like any Democrats. I think it was the first time he probably had a heart attack and why I voted for him. But we were just farming and I was young and had a couple kids and I wasn't embroiled a lot in politics. And I think Idaho Falls at the time was mostly conservative anyway, so I don't know how that whole vote went. But I remember being very happy.
I didn't go back and look at Wallow County for that election, but I know that Wallow County was heavily Democrat in the fallout of the, yeah. I mean, when I moved here in 1971, the Democrats still outnumbered the Republicans 3-2. And all
My
the
vote was, I voted non-resident in Wallow County, even though I was in Kentucky at the time.
But all our county commissioners, the treasurer, everybody was a Democrat. The sheriff, they were all partisan offices, and they were all, I think Clifford Johnson was the first Republican commissioner. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So,
that's a time warp that I don't think people understand. All the people who voted for Trump, all the Republicans, all the disgruntled union workers, manufacturing people, et cetera, those are all Democrats about 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
They were unionized Democrats. So to have Pennsylvania go Republican back then would have been
yeah.
worse than the Civil War.
So, Bev, where were you?
I lived in Colorado, a little town called Fort Murray,
Uh-huh.
and, no, don't ask me, I don't remember. I was in California, Fortuna, California, and I had 2 little boys, and I remember
You were at Fort?
Fortuna, California,
Oh, Fortuna.
where my boys were born, and,
Okay. So you were a young mom, not too.
yes.
Well, I think
One of the things that's really hard for people now to understand, and that Camelot thing, it really captured those of us that are in that age. But the television coverage was really not great. So when we listened that weekend, it was Thanksgiving, they just played the same thing over and over again. They played the shooting, and they got into this, and it was mainly ABC, CBS, and NBC. CNN, of course, wasn't around, and I can't remember whether Huntley and Brinkley gotten there yet in that '63. But he had, Kennedy had come out with his book, PT 10,
yeah.
101. I had that, but it was hard to get in from new information, just listen to it. And so the country was just mesmerized in sadness and despair all that weekend, and yet we just watched the same thing over and over again.
Bob, you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I grew up in Arlington, Virginia, which was right across the river from DC. It's my hometown. The most important story, though, I'm going to jump over to West Virginia. There was a primary in West Virginia in 1960. And the whole deal was if Kennedy could win the primary in West Virginia, then the National Democratic Party would take him seriously. You have to understand, in West Virginia, back in those days, if you had a new product you wanted to sell, bar soap, whatever, they would market it first in West Virginia because they could sell it there. Those people were so suspicious, so backwards. But if you could sell it to them, you could sell it anywhere in the country. And that was the logic. There was a book that came out about 10 years ago. The title was, I Didn't Promise You a Landslide. And it was a telegram that Kennedy got from his father after he had asked for more money and more illegal support. There is a
Yeah.
mafia in West Virginia, and his dad was connected to that. And they were buying votes, half a pint of whiskey, $5. And so he was asking for more support from his dad, and his dad's reply was, "I didn't promise you a landslide." But if Kennedy.
But they did, he did win.
He did win in West Virginia. And the thing was, to his credit, he was really changed by that experience. He went down into the southern coal field and witnessed what people were experiencing. And that's how Vista Volunteers got started, was from that experience. Now for me, in Arlington, living through the 50s and into the 60s, was the only metaphor I can come up with is that it was like going from black and white TV all of a sudden to color TV, and which was coincidental. It happened about that. And for my family, it was an incredible change. My dad didn't have a college degree. He'd been forced out of college in 1929 by the, sort of like Al Josephy, by the Depression. And by 1938, he'd been thoroughly radicalized by the Dust Bowl in West Texas. He went to work for Soil Conservation, and because he didn't have a college degree, he kept being passed over by people with college degrees. Well, by then, he was working in a small office. Has anybody been to those large, huge federal buildings in D.C.?
Oh, yeah.
And they have these hallways that are like 2 stories tall and about as wide as this building here, just gargantuan. And during the war, they had chopped them all up into little cubicles because of the influx due to the war. And he was in a cubicle that was no bigger, just big enough for a small desk and a chair and a telephone, and that was it. And he was a GS7 in 1960. That's not very high, GS7. He wrote a press release, which was part of his job, that was read by Secretary of Agriculture Freeman. Kennedy put into office.
Yeah.
Freeman turned to his aide and said, "Find out who wrote this." And 24 hours later, my dad was a GS-17. They offered, I mean, that's how fast things change.
Yeah.
They offered him what was called a Schedule C, which is a political appointing position. And he said, "Sorry, I worked too hard and too long. And I don't, if Kennedy loses, I'm out the door." And so they wanted him so bad, they made him a GS-17. And talk about a lifestyle change.
Right.
Well, you know, reminds me, I had a Peace Corps friend who was a Washington D.C. intern during the transition from Kennedy from Eisenhower to Kennedy, and he said things low along, and he said all of a sudden when Kennedy's guys hit town, when you got the average age on the street in Washington D.C. dropped like 20 years, and all of a sudden when you were in an office and somebody said, "Get that done," that meant get it done today and not 3 weeks from now. He said that the transition was absolutely astounding in terms of how, just like you said,
Yeah.
the bureaucracy just really picked up.
It changed overnight. The one thing that sticks out for me in the 50s, though,
Yes.
is that I did get to go to the Rose Garden on my 10th birthday and meet President Eisenhower.
Okay.
And because he was reading one of my dad's press releases for the agriculture.
Uh-huh.
That was a good gig.
Dick Birch? Oh, Pam?
I brought something.
Good.
I did. One of my prized photographs. I have 2, and I have another book, but I couldn't find it. America the Beautiful, in the words of John F. Kennedy. The Torch is Passed. You probably heard of that.
I don't
also.
have a fax.
But
so
this
you
is
can
a
send it to
picture
my
of
email.
my brother.
It's director at Josephy.
And you guys can maybe help me identify who's in the car. This is my brother. This is at the UND,
Joseph,
Grand Forks, North Dakota
Hawaii.
University, the University of North
.org.
Dakota. And he was the editor of the college paper, and so he was
Wow.
allowed to trot alongside the.
Freeman should be in
Well, the Freeman
So
is
we've
from
got,
Minnesota, I think.
this is,
Doesn't look like Freeman.
who is that?
that. Well, it would have been,
Mont, it's not.
no, it might have been the governor.
And this, yeah.
Well, that's probably or a Secret Service guy, but the guy behind is probably like the governor of North Dakota or something.
Something like.
Anyway, and the assassination took place the same month.
Oh, this was in '63 as well. This picture.
I think so, yeah.
Well, we should get that. You know, when we get done here, let's put all these
Yeah.
books and stuff out so that people can look through them. Arupa and then Dick, your reflections?
No, I was just going to share my memory of that moment. I had moved the end of that summer to Omaha, Nebraska. My father was at SAC headquarters there, and they had a house and wanted my family. We had 2 children and living in upstate New York, and for my husband to go to college at Creighton, and I got my first teaching job there as a 2nd grade. So I was teaching in the 2nd grade class, and it was right before our lunchtime. And the principal came in and just pulled me aside and told me. So I was just like, you know, oh my God, like, how could this be? And so I couldn't wait for the lunchtime to go into the office and get more information about it. So then I went in, and it just shocked me again because the principal was so nonchalant about it. Well, you know, you're taking care of business as usual, like no big deal. But because it was a Friday and then we had the days off, I just sat glued to the TV that whole weekend, just couldn't take myself away from it, just watching. So when Oswald was shot by Ruby, I just saw it live when they were filming it, and so another shock. So it was just like boom, 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 just incredible. It's just totally unbelievable and so sad. You know, it was. He was such a light, such a force for good, and then to have him just dropped like that, just a real tragedy.
Dick, where were you? 1960.
Yeah, 1960, it was the first time I was able to vote in a presidential election. And voting age, of course, was 21 then. And, you know, as corny as this may seem, is I was in the Naval Reserve at the time. And I joined just after that, just after he was elected. And in his inaugural speech, he made the statement that will forever remain in my memory. Think not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think back now, and I've been in public service my entire life, with the military, with the Navy, and also federal service. And when after he was elected, I was in between college stints at that point, and I was working as a chemist in Pasadena, California. The secretary and the wife of the president of the company that I was working for, engineering company, came in that morning and was convinced that the world was going to end tomorrow because a Catholic had been elected to the presidency. It was absolutely amazing. And then I was in college when he was assassinated, and it took me a while to recover from the fact that a president was assassinated in office.
So I have to say that at the election, I couldn't vote. I went down to see Teddy Kennedy on the DU campus, and then got back to drinking beer and going to college. And I transferred to UC Riverside, and I drank more beer and found rugby, and I'm hopping along, you know, not much interested in politics. I did have a roommate who subscribed to the Nation, so I started getting a little indoctrinated. But what happened that really probably turned me political was the assassination itself. I remember coming onto campus that morning knowing nothing, and Dennis Strong, who was a professor of American history, jogging, running across campus, screaming and wailing that they killed the president. And the next day, 2 guys dropped out of school and joined the Peace Corps. They didn't even finish the end of the year. So, 1965, the fall of 64, a year later, I'm in graduate school and not enjoying it. And the first Vietnam teach-ins were on this is Northwestern campus. And I said, I'm not going to go to war, but I'm going to do what those guys. So the assassination kind of woke me up, and then a year later, the first thought, I said, I don't want to go make war on anybody. And then went boom, right down to the Peace Corps. So that really, you know, that changed. But I think a lot of us, when Kennedy was elected, my campus was not, there was politics going on, and the big thing politically on the University of California campuses, of course, was free speech. You know, free speech movement was in those years. And so it was kind of local politics that I remember more than, you kind of remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, but it was kind of like, it was also that the whole lot that was in the hands of younger people. You know, it was kind of our turn, yeah.
That sparked a memory. The fellow running across the street. I was in study hall in the library in high school, and you weren't supposed to have, you're supposed to be studying, right? And somebody had one of those little miniature transistor radios down here, but all of a sudden he jerked it out, turned it up as loud as he could, and held it up. And the librarian went bananas. Wouldn't believe, you know, he was going, the president's been shot. And the librarian really came down hard on him. But then the reality sunk in, you know, and that was it for the day of school.
Yeah, I was kind of on the other side of where she was, because I was in the 3rd grade at the time, at an all-Catholic school. And we, you know, in Boston, in neighborhoods at least, you barely knew anybody that wasn't Catholic at the time. I used to sometimes pray for the neighbor next door because they weren't Catholic. It seemed so nice. But you know, what I remember is that the nuns were crying, and that was something nuns did not do. We got sent home early. My dad happened to be sick that day from work, and my dad was crying when I came home. I had never seen my dad cry before. So that was really a powerful thing. The house was dark, the curtains were drawn, and my mom and dad were in the living room, both crying, watching television at that point. And so it was like indelible to see my parents, especially my dad, you know, he never showed emotion like that. And then, like people have said, the next 3 days we were watching television pretty much nonstop. I was actually out playing Sunday, I believe it was Sunday morning, down the street, and my mother hollered down to me. She said, Oswald's been shot, and then I came and saw that.
I wonder, I've heard it said by historians that JFK would not have gone down as much of a president.
That's what, you know.
But when you think about it now, maybe the thing that he went down for and what makes Kennedy so instrumental is that he was a martyr. I mean, he freed up this young, youthful energy that was there, and then he became a martyr, and pretty soon there was the radicalized movement. We saw LBJ, who I have much admiration for, but he was sort of following down the same paths as the other old folks, getting us into a war that we really didn't want. So I think that energy, that sense of we can cause something to happen, this is not the way we want to go, is what caused the radicalization of the 70s.
Well,
And then you kill Martin Luther King, and
there's another thing in there. I think that Bobby Kennedy, remember the criticism of JFK for appointing his brother as to the cabinet? That was impossible. You couldn't do that. Can now, but you couldn't do, it was not done. But if you follow Bobby Kennedy's career a little bit, there's where the real transformation takes place. Bobby starts out, of course, he'd been involved with McCarthy hearings, for heaven's sake.
much better politician.
Pardon?
I mean, he was more political savvy than his brother.
But what happened is he was captured more than his brother ever was. Robert Kennedy had turned in terms of the civil rights movement before his brother's assassination. He had gone to the South a couple of times. Am I remembering right?
I think you are, yes.
Yeah, he had begun, and when,
Well, he was largely responsible for enforcing.
for what?
Enforcing.
Exactly.
What was done, with the National Guard.
That's right.
When integration began.
And he had to push his brother on.
And had to deal with Hoover, though.
And had to deal with
Yeah.
who had it. So Bobby Kennedy, and then, I'd forgotten that whole thing, but he really was in charge of the enforcement there. And then Bobby Kennedy, when Martin Luther King is assassinated, Bobby Kennedy, against the advice of all of his advisors, goes, where was it, Cleveland, or into a black community.
Yeah, that night.
Oh, yeah,
That
no,
night.
that is the most amazing speech.
And it was the most amazing speech, So,
He had just gotten
Might have
the
been
word,
like
and
Harry
he walked
Indiana
out
or
and he
something.
said, I'm sad to have to tell you this,
yeah.
but Martin Luther King.
But he was advised by everybody not to do that, that he was going to. So you can talk about what might have been, but really in some ways, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, as far as the nation is concerned, is the most tragic, is almost more tragic. And to take it forward, so in 1965, I go to Turkey, and then in 1968, I'm in D.C. for the assassinations of both. In fact, I remember running down to the mall to watch the hearse come by with Bobby. But I went back to Turkey, where we had been, where there were pictures in the most remote village of JFK and Ataturk together. Most remote. And then, by then it was, why did Johnson kill Kennedy? It wasn't did he, it was why did Johnson kill Kennedy? And then they rehearsed that whole thing about the Oswald, they had it all memorized, all that stuff, right up to the Bobby Kennedy,
This was my senior year in high school, 63, 64. We had a German student, AFS, living with us for the year. And the first thing he asked my dad, he said, we've had a coup. Who's going to take over the country? And I just myself have personally believed that the whole thing was not just a lone assassin. That's a whole nother meeting. I would like to say that my dad had gotten up, his security clearance had gotten so high as a result of this job change. They started having war game exercises where they would take all the top cabinet officials out of D.C. to an undisclosed location somewhere outside of D.C. by helicopter. And for 5 and 6 days at a time, they would practice the what-ifs. How would you run the country if there was a nuclear attack? And right just before, it's ironic, just before the Cuban Missile Crisis, Dad came to my mom and I and said, look, I can't tell you where it is I've been going. I can't tell you what it is I'm doing. But if anything bad ever happens, here is a place, if you could get out of D.C., here's a place that I want you to go to.
Wow.
It was White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, which is right next door to the Greenbrier Resort, which is where Congress had their secret headquarters under the golf course. So it was a rather tense time, especially if you lived in D.C. during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
I had a further contact with the Kennedys, not a contact, but in, I think we'll be talking about, almost 2000, I don't know for sure. My son has an in-law who is on board of the Boston Symphony. So I was at Tanglewood, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I was at Tanglewood going to a symphony concert, and of course, because
That's in the western part of the state. Is that what it is?
yeah, Western Massachusetts. And because my companion there, or our host, was on the board, we went into the pavilion where all the bigwigs were having their cocktails. And there was Teddy, 300 and I don't know how many pounds, I don't know how many heart attacks or whatever. And he was there with his cronies around him. And I remember thinking, gee, that's Ted Kennedy. And my thought right then was, God, we've come a long way. I mean, this is not a Kennedy. This is not where this dynasty should have ended.
The interesting thing, and I left, we were gone a long time, but I'd grown up in Oregon. As I was growing up and during this election, and I wasn't close, was at that time the Oregonian and the Journal. The Oregonian had the Republican editorial policy and the Journal, and we always took the Journal, and it had the more Democratic one, and then they finally put them all together. But the contrast of the editorial of where Oregon was struggling at that time and its whole political views, and that's where Morris and some of the other ones changed parties, and you know, he himself was quite a character.
Pam, you know, you can do Google image search now. I don't know if Cheryl knows how to do that, but you can. I'm intrigued by it. I'll bet you that, or what I would do first is look up the governor of North Dakota at the time. I'll bet you it's a governor or a senator from North Dakota. I bet you that who would have been with him.
Which is probably why I recognize him.
So where were you, Pam?
Well,
How much
I was in
younger are you?
third grade. John and I are the same age, and I was in third grade, and I was in school, and I was in my math class, my least favorite class, and the teacher came in. Somebody came into the classroom and had a whispered conversation with my teacher, and she started to cry immediately and stepped outside and left us kids in the room alone, which was never done for a long time. Remember, we all sat there for a long time trying to be quiet, and then were let out early and went home. But it was devastating. Still is. Because there's no resolution, still no resolution.
Well, it became, it went from being very sad to becoming bizarre really quickly with
Becoming an industry. One final thing, I went from Arlington, Virginia, graduated there, ended up in North Texas, north of Dallas, at a small Presbyterian college, and in '64 fall, and I was like surrounded by people who were glad that Kennedy had been assassinated.
Wow.
It was like just night and day for me. And,
Yeah, I think we think that the country is divided now, but there were certainly divisions.
Now, there was a professor at Austin College where I went, who the year before had made a very triumphant announcement in class that Kennedy was shot. He was glad of it. To their credit, they fired him.
Virginia?
Yeah, my thoughts and my thinking here are going a little different direction as the female of the species that was never in war and never saw any of this. I mean, I remember where I was when he was shot. But I remember the last few days I've been thinking about the Kennedys, and a few days ago a girlfriend of mine and I were talking and saying the White House has never been the same since Jackie and JFK left. No courtesy, no grace, no beauty. no art, none of that has been the same since they left. And so I thought about that a little, and shortly before that, I had watched a documentary on Cesar Chavez and what happened then. And it had clips of Robert Kennedy going directly to the farms in Delano, saying, I'm on this man's side, I will never drink your wine, I will tell everybody I know never to drink your wine, get the facilities for these people or you're going to be out of business. And I thought that, as I was watching that then, I was thinking about then the family, the Kennedy family, that we all know that their start and where they got their money wasn't of the best. You know, wasn't something to walk around and be real proud about. But I think that Mother Rose Kennedy kind of held the family together and taught them the other side of things without downing their father. Saying, you know, you've been given a great responsibility. Responsibility comes with this money. And the responsibility is benevolence and care for those who don't have. And I think that that was kind of ingrained in these young men. You know, they had both sides of them, but they all had this caring for other people. And wanting to, you know, the Peace Corps, the this, the that, all of the things that was near and dear to their heart. And the protection of the people. And I find that to be a great legacy there. And I may be daydreaming a bit, but that's kind of what I see from this point.
I think that the Kennedy speech, ask not what your country can do for you, was powerful and affected a lot of us.
Yes.
But it didn't come out of nowhere.
Right.
It didn't come out of nowhere. In Alvin Josephy's memoir, there's a picture of a bunch of them in Hollywood after the war. And his buddy had a newspaper. There was also a Marine Corps guy. And he and his daughter were here this summer. Last summer, Alvin was here. And we all went out, and Alvin had actually fainted at the powwow, and we ended up in the hospital. So I spent a bunch of time with this woman whose father had been, and she said, well, look at that picture. She said, they came back from that war, they won the war, they beat the emperor, they beat Hitler, they beat them all down, and they could do anything. And they came back here, and they were going to straighten out the country. And she said, and they worked hard, and they played hard. And she said, who was the woman on McNeil Laird from LA that used to always be anyway, she was younger, and she said, I was babysitting her one night, and she cried and cried because the parents didn't come home. That crew was out. But if you think about that, and then I think about the fact, we were talking earlier, Mike and I, when in high school, in college, I never remember anybody telling me how much a doctor made, how much a lawyer made, how much an accountant made. It was find something important to do with your life, you know. So I think Kennedy just crystallized that thinking. It was there. It was there. And, yeah, Mike.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I wonder if somebody has ever, a historian, looked at this in terms of the influence of Brother Joe. Well, you think that Brother Joe was the anointed one. He was the one who was going to have everything come to him, and his parents really loved him and doted on him. And he was lost. You know, he was lost in the war. And I wonder how much Bobby and John and Eunice and all those thought, I got to do things to not necessarily compete, but live up to Brother Joe.
With great talent, with great money, with great whatever, comes great responsibility. That was a hackneyed, yeah.
My thought was the benevolence that they moved into.
You gotta go? I love that picture.
I do too.
Yeah, bring it, or I don't know, we probably should break up anyway and set things out somewhere. Let's set them on a table somewhere.
Yeah, I just
yeah.
wanted to.
And by the way, it's Arupo's birthday today. Happy birthday, Arupo.
Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday, dear Rupo. Happy birthday to you.
I just wanted to end on an encouraging note. I've been following some of the things Robert Kennedy Jr. is involved in, and really encouraged with the positions he's taking on the vaccine issue, which I feel very strongly about. And now also in the Senate, Joe Kennedy the third, I think it is, that's a representative and talking about running for the Senate. And he's just taking some really strong positions, you know, for the good of us all. And so they're, you know, they continue. It's like it didn't end with the grandfathers, the uncles. There's still people in the Kennedy family that are carrying that legacy on and wanting things to be better in this country and willing to contribute and sacrifice for it.
And I think part of the offspring of that, and I was thinking of that also, I was going to mention it, but things like, places like the Josephy Center, I think the ideas behind it are an offspring of that. History, art, an offspring of these people who history was so important to, art was so important to, and here we are, you know, with wonderful artists and people
And
who
I think
want to
if-
share and
I think if you,
yeah.
I wrote a paper one time on a guy who wrote a book called Power, and I think that if you trace power has moved from ecclesiastical power to military power to hereditary power, and we're in an age where power is associated with wealth and fame. And it won't be the last age, and what'll come next, I don't know that we know, but certainly I was,
Revolution.
huh?
Revolution.
Proceed.
You ever seen this many people in the streets politically?
Yeah. There's certainly opportunity. And one of the things I think that is really different now is the rise of women. I just emailed somebody this morning. I teach this class in LeGrand. 50% of the ag majors in American universities now are women. 50% of the ag majors. 50% of the lawyers are women. 50% of the doctors are women. 80 or 90% of the veterinarians are women. You know what percentage of farms are owned by women? Or co-owned by women?
No, but they're
It's very small.
worked so hard.
6%.
Holy
6%.
Wow.
Women are still, the brother gets the farm. If they buy a farm, it's in the husband's name, whatever, that women. And so, you know, there are some changes that are coming, and it's going to be, that people don't realize. I mean, there's also a backlash, but more graduate students are women. In college now, there are more women than men. And especially, and the graduate school thing just ticked a couple of years ago. There are now more female graduate students than male. So,
There's more clergy in the more liberal denominations.
more
There are
female clergy.
than there are male.
Yeah.
I remember when my sister-in-law went to the first now convention, and she stood up and said, "Liberate me from my cows."
Well, I kind of think this is a prediction. If Nikki Haley doesn't step on her skirt, I think she could very well be a candidate for president.
She's one of the bright lights, certainly, in that administration.
Party,
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you all for coming. And remember,
Good job, sir.
in a couple of weeks, and thank you especially Mike, and at the end of the month, Dick Birch. And by the way, next week, for you musicians, shake them.